This is always a really interesting way to rank teams. Just the starting lineups of every single team in the league. You have to think about versatility. You have to think about who the 5 best players are. You have to think about how those pieces fit together. It's not just the best teams, it's the best starting lineups. Let's rank every single one of them in the NBA. We begin as always with the bottom tier. Now, these teams are not ranked within the tiers, but the tiers themselves, of course, are ranked. And this bottom tier is the D tier. I begin with the Indiana Pacers. Now, I might have some of these players slightly off. Maybe you think someone is a starter that isn't. Obviously, these things can change throughout the season, but right now I have Indiana's starting lineup as Halliburton, Hield, Duarte, Turner, and then Isaiah Jackson. You can put whatever big in there. You can say that maybe Duarte's not going to start, but for me, from a talent perspective, this obviously is not a very good group. They don't have, really any players that can guard on the perimeter. Miles Turner is fine, but he's also someone that the Pacers have been trying to trade for like 3 years now. And as much as I like Halliburton, that doesn't catapult them up to any higher tier than the bottom one. Next up is Utah. You probably saw this one coming because they are trading away all of their best players. We're looking at Conley, Beasley, Bogdanovich, Vanderbilt, and Markkanen, which is actually mildly interesting, but who knows if Bogdanovich and Conley are going to be on the roster by the time the season rolls around. This looks like a team that's going to be trading those guys away, but even with that group of 5, I think it's one of the worst starting lineups in the league. And then the only other team that I have in this bottom tier is San Antonio. I could not figure out what their starting lineup was. I went with Jones, Langford, Richardson, Johnson, and Collins, but I really don't know. The only thing that I do know is that Keldon Johnson is the best player. That's all I've got. That's really the only thing that I have. And obviously, this is not a very good starting lineup and arguably the worst starting lineup in the entire league. There's some interesting young players on the roster, but strictly in terms of the best 5 guys they're going to put on the floor to start games, it's not very good. We move on, however, to what is a more interesting category to me, the C tier. We begin that category with a team that I wish I could put higher, but I was actually pretty surprised when I put the list together, and that's the Detroit Pistons. I like Jaden Ivey, but he's a rookie. I love Cade, but he's not enough to put them up any higher. Sadiq Bey's fine. Marvin Bagley's fine. Isaiah Stewart's fine. You can swap out Stewart if you like to. Maybe you like Bey a lot more than than I do. Bagley, to me, still has a lot to prove. And to me, Cade just by himself and then the addition of the talent of Ivy, in my opinion, is not enough to bump them up any higher than this. But I do think they're interesting. They're going to be fun to watch. I have them in the C tier. Next up, Houston. I thought about putting them in the B tier because Jalen Green's really good. I think Jabari's going to be good. But for me, I have Jalen Green, Kevin Porter, Eric Gordon, Jabari Smith, and Alperen Şengün. Gordon and whatever other guard you want to put out there is obviously a weird fit, but I just tried to put some of the best players on the floor that I could for Houston. And given the fact that they lack any real true wings that have played real NBA minutes that I think would actually be starters, I ended up with this group for them. For me, this is certainly a C tier group. Next up, Orlando. I wish I could put them higher because I actually like a lot of their players, but strictly in terms of their top end talent, I'm going Suggs, Anthony Wagner, Banchero, and Wendell Carter. Now, Wagner has looked incredible this offseason in some overseas competition, or international competition, I should say. Paolo, I think, is going to be really good. Cole Anthony can score. Jalen Suggs should have a bounce back year. But the strength of this team, more so outside of Wagner and Paolo, kind of top end scoring, is going to be their depth. They have 9 or 10 different guys that I actually kind of sneaky like. So the starting lineup is not their strength, and ultimately they're going to be in the C tier. Next up now is the Thunder. I have their starting lineup as SGA, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and Derek Favors. The 2 front court guys, I really don't know who it's going to be. Obviously it would have been Chet if he was healthy, I feel like, but the 3 backcourt perimeter guys I think are pretty set in stone. Dort can really guard. I like Giddey and SGA together, but unfortunately the front court stuff really holds them back. And I think they're close to being bumped up a spot, but you'll see once we get to some of these other teams, there are some really good starting lineups in that B tier, and that ultimately is why Oklahoma City ends up here. Next up in this tier is Charlotte. I thought about putting them down in the D tier. They have Rozier, Ball, Hayward, Oubre, I guess, maybe, and Plumlee. You can put the rookie in there at the 5 spot if you'd like to. LaMelo obviously is a very high ceiling type player, and Hayward, if healthy, is good. But overall, I just don't think this is going to be a very good team, and I do not think that I would pick any of the lineups in the B tier after I would pick the one for Charlotte. So that's why their group is going to be in this tier. Next up is the New York Knicks. I have them having Brunson, Fournier, I guess, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. Again, from a talent perspective, it's not fantastic as much as I like RJ. Mitchell Robinson helps them obviously defensively. Julius Randle was an all-NBA caliber guy 2 seasons ago, and maybe he'll get back to that. But even with the addition of Jalen Brunson, I don't see this as one of the better starting lineups in the league. And then last up in this tier is Washington with Morris, Beal, Kuzma, KP, and Daniel Gafford. I like Daniel Gafford. Bradley Beal, obviously a very good player, and he's probably the best player in this tier. It's either him or LaMelo, maybe SGA, whatever you'd like. But obviously the players around him in this group are not fantastic. Maybe if KP's healthy and Kuzma continues to grow and develop, you can bump them up. But to me, they're pretty solidly in that C tier. Next up now is the B tier, and I begin with the Chicago Bulls. And this is a weird group to put together in terms of their lineup, because I think if Lonzo's healthy, he obviously plays for them. He would start. Right now I have Ball, Caruso, Levine, DeRozan, and Vucevic. You can take out Caruso and put in Patrick Williams. You can take out Lonzo and put in Patrick Williams. Whatever you'd like to do there, this is just the group that I came up with. And if Lonzo's healthy, I feel more optimistic about this group, given how good DeMar was last year, how great of a scorer Levine is, and the talent level of Vucevic, even though he hasn't really fit super well with this roster yet. And, you know, they have good players in the backcourt that can guard, and overall it fits really well together. I just don't know about the health of Lonzo and the defensive upside of this group, and so I'm going to put them in the B tier. That's not a bad place to be, by the way. There's a lot of really good lineups in this tier. Next up now, we have the Atlanta Hawks, and I did end up putting them in the B tier. I have Trey Young, DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Clint Capella. They're pretty close to the A tier. I'm not optimistic about the fit of Murray and Trey Young. Certainly not as optimistic as other people. I think Trey's going to be reluctant to give up all the on-ball creation he's been allowed to have so far in his time in the league. And I don't really love DeJounte as an off-ball guy either. And so all that in combination, I'm just not as high in the backcourt here. You know, Hunter's a good defender if he's healthy. Capella's good if he's healthy. Same thing with Collins. And the backcourt is good. If you want to make an argument for them in the A tier, that's fine, but I have them in the B tier. Next up is Dallas with Luka, Tim Hardaway Jr. recovering from injury, Dorian Finney-Smith, who I really like, Christian Wood, who I don't like so much, and JaVale McGee. They're also kind of close to the A tier just because of how great Luka is. Spoiler alert later on, the Bucks are higher than this later on. Of course, they have Giannis, but I also think that in general, they have better pieces in that starting lineup than Dallas does. The loss of Jalen Brunson certainly doesn't help, and I don't think Christian Wood is going to be as big of an addition for this group as some other people do, and so I have them in the B tier. Moving on now to the LA Lakers. Maybe they should be higher than this, but I don't think Russ is that positive of a player in terms of their starting lineup, and so I went with Russ, Patrick Beverley, LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Thomas Bryant, whoever you want to put in the 5 spot. Maybe you think they're going to play a little bit smaller and AD is going to be playing at the 5. Whatever the case may be, Russ really brings down this group, and I don't know what I'm getting from LeBron in terms of health. I don't know what I'm getting from Anthony Davis in terms of health, and I just couldn't put them in the A tier. You're going to see what the A tier looks like here in a second. I couldn't put them there given the injury concerns and the fit concerns with Russell Westbrook. I just couldn't do it. Next up now is the Sacramento Kings, as I have the Kings and the Lakers in the same tier in terms of ranking their starting lineup. This is Fox, Malik Monk, maybe. You could put Davion Mitchell here if you want to, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, and Domantas Sabonis. That's a pretty good group. You've got shooting. Harrison Barnes can guard. You've got a great pick and roll combination in Sabonis and Fox, and a duo that looked really, really good down the stretch last year. And I find myself weirdly gravitating towards this Kings team, specifically in terms of their starting lineup, and especially offensively, being pretty good this year. So I put them in the B tier. And then last up in this tier is the Portland Trailblazers with Dame, Anthony Simons, Nasir Little. You can close your eyes and pick a wing and put whoever you want to there. You can put Josh Hart if you want to right there, if you want to go really small. And then Jeremy Grant and Yusuf Nurkic. Grant certainly helps as another scoring option for them as a defender. Nurkic is one of the more underrated bigs in the league, I think, especially as a passer. Nasir Little can guard and shoot here a little bit, and then Simons and Lillard, of course, offensively are going to be great. The defensive fit between those two guys is not going to be very good, and if you want to take Simons out and put Josh Hart in and then have Simons be the 6-man guy, that's fine. But then obviously I think that hurts their lineup overall, and so I put them in the B tier. We move on now to the A tier. This was, to me, one of the most difficult tiers to try and rank because I had difficulty figuring out what made an S tier lineup, and ultimately I don't have that many teams in the S tier. We begin the A tier with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, if healthy and if everybody's playing and if everybody fits, this lineup's good. Kyrie, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, and Nick Claxton, or you can take out Claxton, put Simmons and KD in there, the front court together, which I think they will play together in that way at times, and then put, you know, whoever else you want to in there. The problem with this particular group on screen is the fact that they don't have enough shooting outside of obviously Harris, KD, and Kyrie, but the Simmons-Claxton spacing combo is weird, and then if you take Claxton out and put Simmons at the 5, then you kind of get away from some of the size and length that I think can make this particular lineup special. If you want to, you know, make the case for them to be in the S tier, you are more than welcome to. I'm not going to make that case just because the vibes and the momentum is down for the Nets, and being a Nets fan, everybody was going to accuse me of putting them in the S tier only because I'm a fan, so I put them in the A tier, which I still feel like is a pretty good spot for them. Next up in the A tier, I ended up going with the Denver Nuggets, a very intriguing team for me this upcoming season with Jamal Murray, KCP, who is a much cleaner fit at the 2 than pretty much any player that they've had in the Jokic era in terms of a 3-and-D guy. They don't need any more on-ball scoring. KCP is perfect for them. Michael Porter Jr., if healthy, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. There's also some really interesting options kind of coming off the bench for this group. Bruce Brown is still there as well, or is now there. Jeff Green, some interesting options there. But having said all those things, we'll talk about the starting lineup. Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., if healthy, you could argue this is an S tier lineup. You have a multiple-time MVP in Nikola Jokic. You have perimeter scoring in Murray. You have length and perimeter scoring in Michael Porter Jr. And like I said, KCP is the perfect off-ball fit. If Aaron Gordon can space the floor, which really he's the only non-spacer on the floor, so maybe he doesn't even need to, if he can be decent enough offensively to be a positive impact on this team, this can be a very, very good group, potentially an S tier team, in my opinion, in terms of their starting lineup. Next up is Miami, another team that I had a lot of difficulty placing. That for them is going to be Lowry. I think there's a lot of buzz about Tyler Hero starting this year, then be alongside Jimmy Butler, Caleb Martin, who replaces PJ Tucker, and then Bam Adebayo. Now, the Lowry thing is weird because when I look at his name on the list and on screen, I'm like, oh, well, of course he's a positive player for them. I don't know if he is. Like, I don't know what he is at this point in his career, where he's at injury-wise, all that different stuff. So that's a concern for me, but I think Tyler Hero is certainly a very good scorer. Jimmy Butler is really great, and then, Bam defensively gives him so much. And I think Caleb Martin is a sneaky good player as well, so I'm going to put them in the A tier. Next up in this tier is the Boston Celtics. They almost made it to the S tier, but the front court stuff gets a little bit weird, okay? So you have Marcus Smart, you have Jaylen Brown, you have Jason Tatum. Those are the perimeter guys, right? The Robert Williams, Al Horford thing, we might have seen the ceiling of that last year. Granted, the ceiling was fantastic, but Williams gets hurt all the time. Horford's getting older, and I would feel much better if I had another guy in that front court that I felt really, really strongly about as a big that fits really well. And so ultimately, I put them in the A tier, but it'd be pretty easy to make an argument, in my opinion, to put them in the S tier. Next up now is maybe a team that's a bit surprising to be here for some people, and that is the Toronto Raptors. I have Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and Precious Achiuwa, who I like. You can put Chris Boucher in there if you want to, but in terms of pieces that fit together, everybody does a little bit of something, and just a lot of different options here and versatility and ways that they can play. I love this Raptors lineup. I think that they're going to be a really fun team to watch. I think they're going to play well on both ends of the floor. This to me is an A tier group. Next up is a team that I was really, really excited to rank, and that was the Cleveland Cavaliers. You have Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. That sounds like a fantastic lineup, right? You've got two really good defenders in the front court to make up for some of the defensive issues of the backcourt. Those two guys in the backcourt are good scorers and good facilitators. My two big issues here. One, Isaac Okoro is one of the worst off-ball three-point shooters in the league that received a high volume in terms of minutes and three-point attempts last year. He's not a very good off-ball shooter. He can guard and he can play well in transition, but if he can't shoot the ball, they have a massive issue in terms of who's going to play the three for them this year. And then also, as much as I like the Garland and Mitchell thing and the Mobley and Allen thing, that feels a little bit rigid because you're counting on all defense from one duo and all offense from the other duo. That feels like it might be a little bit of an issue in terms of being too rigid in the way that you can play. Having said that, the talent is there, the youth is there, they're only going to continue to get better, and if they figure out some stuff on the wing, they could easily be an S tier team. But for now, I'm going to put them in the A tier. Next up now is Phoenix. It's a lineup we all know by this point. It's Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton. You can put Cam Johnson in there if you'd like to. This is a very, very good group. It depends on Chris Paul's age and health, and it depends on how much you're getting out of the wings, specifically Crowder, Johnson, and Bridges. In terms of both ends of the floor, you have guys that are great defensively, but not great offensively, and then the other way around. But this is obviously a very well-rounded group and one that I'm going to put in the A tier. Memphis is up next. I wish I could put them higher because I think the overall depth of their team is really good, but their starting five is actually not one of the top tier ones in the league in terms of being one of the 2 or 3 best lineups in the league. They have Ja, Bane. I put Brooks here. You can switch the wings around however you want to. Maybe you're a big Zaire Williams person. Jaren Jackson, and then Steven Adams. That's a really good group. Great size, great length. Everybody can score. Everybody can shoot with the exception of Steven Adams. And it's a really versatile group, but ultimately having someone like Adams who's pretty much a zero offensively apart from garbage buckets is a negative for them. And the backcourt / perimeter fit is a little bit weird when you're looking at like Brooks, Bane, Morant. There's no true kind of bigger wing there that I think a lot of the better lineups in the league do feature. Next up, Minnesota, also in the A tier. I have for them Russell Edwards, McDaniels, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert. Now, 2 reasons that they aren't higher for me. I'm not a big D'Angelo Russell guy. I haven't been for a while. And Jaden McDaniels, while fine, is not someone that I'm super confident about being, one of the guys I'm really excited about having in one of my 3 or 4 best starting lineups in the entire league, which is where you kind of have to be at this point to go up to the S tier, but a very, very good group, assuming that Towns and Gobert fit well together. And then last up in this tier, I wish I could put them in the S tier, but again, I think it speaks more to their depth as a team than it does their starting lineup. Kind of similar to Memphis a little bit for me is the LA Clippers. So for me, I put Reggie Jackson, Norman Powell, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Zubats. You can put in Covington, you can put in John Wall, you can put in 17 different guys in this lineup if you'd like to. And again, I think that speaks to the versatility and the depth of the team as a whole rather than the lineup itself. It's a very good lineup, but not one of the very, very top tier lineups in the league, in my opinion. And now we move on to the final tier. The top tier, the top 3 starting lineups in the entire league, in my opinion, this year are the Milwaukee Bucks to begin. Of course, it's Giannis, it's Jrue Holiday, it's Chris Middleton, it's Brook Lopez, and then it's whoever else you want to put out there with them. You can pick Pat Connaughton, you can pick Grayson Allen, you can take Brook Lopez out and put in Bobby Portis. When you have Giannis, Holiday, and Middleton fully healthy, it's probably the best best two-way trio of players in the league in terms of what they give you both offensively and defensively. And they have enough kind of complementary role player stuff happening in this lineup that I think they're in the top tier. Next up, very easy for me, is Golden State. Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Green, Looney. You can swap out Clay for Jordan Poole if you'd like to. This group works so well together. They have so many different options. They have so many different ways that they can play. You can put, Draymond Green in there at the 5. You can take Looney out. You can put Poole in there. Whatever you want to do. They certainly have the best starting lineup combination to me, or one of the best in the league. And then I ended up putting Philadelphia here. And mostly I put them in the S tier for 2 reasons. 1, because I think they're going to be really good with this group, assuming everybody's healthy. And then 2, I kind of need you guys to tell me if I'm going crazy. Like, am I losing my mind thinking that this lineup of Harden, Maxey, PJ Tucker, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid is going to be like really, really good? Because the one thing that they really needed, right, was a perimeter scorer guy that could also shoot the ball, provide them energy and effort. And they didn't have that guy. Like, Tybalt's fine, but he can't shoot the ball. PJ Tucker's going to help them a ton there. And I think they have some other options that they've added this offseason as well that are going to help them. And if Harden comes back and is healthy and is good, Maxey continues to grow and develop, PJ Tucker is that veteran presence, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, that to me feels like an S tier starting lineup. I put them here because I want to know if I'm going crazy. Right now, I'm putting them there, but if enough of you are like, what are you talking about, Tucker? They're definitely in the A tier, then you can let me know and maybe I'll change my mind. But that is my ranking of the every single starting lineup in the entire league this season. It's a weird thing to rank because you're not ranking the teams as a whole, or you're not ranking their depth as a whole. It's just their 5 players, and not even their 5 best players in a lot of cases, just the 5 guys they're going to put on the floor to start games. Let me know down in the comment section below what your favorite and your least favorite ranking was in the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.